Hi everyone, welcome back to the CollabCast. I'm editor Katie Cusack, and I'm here with local media personality, radio personality, Shea.
Hi.
How's it going?
Good, how are you?
Good. Welcome to the podcast,
Thank
video
you.
And audio. You know, however people really choose to listen to it, it's up to them.
I'm getting used to the lights.
Yes, exactly. The heat, the intensity. So today we're here to talk about you and your experiences and your time on the radio and alternative media that people recognize you from, and sort of how you've used that platform to speak out again about local issues, and particularly that of sexual assault. So why don't we start by sort of just getting into how you got into radio?
I always wanted to get into radio. My dad was a radio DJ. Him and Albany legend Sugar Bear, they actually used to do a show together in Utica, where I was born. And so just like early memories of my dad just doing the radio show, listening to music. I just always wanted to do that. So I, was interning at, I should say, like, I was a young intern. I was always asking questions to, like, Brian Cody when he was a top 40 station. So I think I've known all of them since I was 11, and I've always just asked questions, wanted to see how I got involved, became an intern at, like, their street team, and then I went to college about 12 years ago to go to the new school, and got a job right after that at a rock station for about 5 years, as long as it was on. Learned a lot being young and being a female, especially at a rock station. You learn the way I didn't say it was a corporate. It was like locally owned and operated, but it was still kind of corporate in that way of just favors and people. So I took a while took me 7 years to get back into radio. I wasn't really interested. I was interested, but I was interested in finding a place that was more comfortable, that wouldn't hinder my talent, because I feel like where I was, people knew I was naturally talented and just being a real person and talkative and entertaining, but they didn't want to hone my skills because I think they would have thought I would have taken their job in a way. So it was really eye-opening to be, 20, 21. I think I did it for like 25, and then we turned to country, so I was like, I'm good. And then went to another job, and then somebody Kim came up to me at Tulip Fest and was like, hey, what are you doing? And I was like, I don't know. I'm finishing my associates right now, because I went back to school 2 years ago to finish my bachelor's, and found some way to fit it in, and I enjoy it. I feel like I'm at a place where I can be myself, where there isn't that much pettiness or the corporate kind of thing, and I can just be myself and just be real, and I just I love the crazy family that I work with. So that's how I kind of got back into it, because you realize it's not about loving music as much as I do love music. It's about entertaining people. And I felt like I could do that. I'm just a dork, so I can just get in and say things and have a fun little dance party.
And do you feel like, is that a reason that you felt like DJing was a good spot for you, because you could speak out and be real while also enjoying music and sort of being in a public eye? I didn't really go into it thinking to be a public figure in that way. I kind of kept the two separate, because I do a lot of local activism on my own, but separate to where I work. Right.
So I didn't really want to bring those two in together, because I didn't want people to be like, well, she does this, I'm an advocate for Planned Parenthood and I go to lobby days and all that stuff, but I didn't want to bring that involved with my job. So I kind of keep that a little bit, but then I figured out ways, but when certain things came about, especially after, because I think I joined July of 2017, and that was a good year after I was raped. So it was like figuring out, I'm like, well, you know what, there are things going on, because the Me Too movement was going on in the middle of it, and I didn't want to be like, nah, like force it onto somebody, but it's like, hey, I'm going through this. I'm just going to mention it so people could just have, you know, one of those things where like, well, listen, hey, listen to her. Wait, I know her. How did I, you know?
Right. Yeah. So we kind of just jumped into it, but I do want to take a step back and sort of address, obviously, your experience. And like you said, it was a significant amount of time after I'm not
you
sure.
Can say rape.
Yeah. It's like after your rape, and then you joined the radio station. And at what point did you sort of feel like, separately from the radio station, what point in your journey in addressing your rape, in healing from it, did you say, I want to start talking about it? I want to...
I remember I don't think I talked officially about... I didn't use the word rape until this year. I do remember when I was doing nights, there was something that went on, and I said something. I said, listen, all of us deal with depression and anxiety, and I just remember that day I didn't want to get up. I didn't want to do anything. I just didn't want to exist that day, but I knew that what I do is make people's day. And so that kind of got me up. And I mentioned it. I said, listen, I don't want to get out of bed today, but I'm here because I want to make sure that you guys have a good night, and to have, you know, something interesting in your mind to talk about, or to just have a good time listening to music. So that was like the first time I ever said something. I kind of waited until everything was legally said and done, because I didn't want to get any... not backlash, but didn't want to have any other situations going on, because I love my job.
And you don't want to complicate the actual legal process.
You know, I'm so grateful that getting that job kind of gave me my life back, because I, you know, lost a lot of me during this whole process. But to be able to just kind of sit in a box and just listen to music, and then just to dance or just to sing, you know, just to get that release out, it just really did help me get some of what I lost back. But I was just careful the way that I spoke about things, because I didn't want to say too much and not feel like it was all about me. But I knew it was, you know, people listen to me, people enjoy me entertaining them. I think people also could tell if there were days where I just wasn't myself in that way. But it wasn't until after everything was said and done that I started to speak a little bit more, because it was hard, because I didn't know how to deal with my emotions. You know, the last thing I wanted to also do is have a hot microphone in front of me where I'm still in the middle of a court case where, you know, the kid who raped me is, you know, making it a little difficult to go to court. And it's just like, nah, you know, you don't.
Right.
I had to, you know, keep that distance. But even with the Me Too movement, and then all the other, and the Kavanaugh hearing, I think the Kavanaugh hearing was the first time that I remember sitting down and saying, you know, 2 days before Pearl-Palooza, I myself stood in court and mentioned it, and I think I said I was a sexual assault victim. And then it wasn't until I think like a couple weeks ago with the R. Kelly thing that I mentioned about John Legend. He said, as a rape victim, I'm just glad that, you know, John Legend stood up and said something about with the whole R. Kelly thing, because it's hard. The hardest thing is trying to get him to be believed, you know, and it's like being a rape victim, and even going to report your rape, it's like it's a crime that you have to prove that happened, and that's hard for anyone to take when you know it happened to you, but you've got to prove it in a way. So I just when things come about on the news is when I sit there and talk about it. I don't sit there and address it every day, but it was something that happened that day that I was just like, all right, I'm gonna say something. And I've gotten some really good positive. I've only had like one negative feedback, but other than that, everyone, you know, just to get email. I got an email from a male listener that just made me ugly cry for like a couple hours, because it was so touching for him to say thank you for being a public figure that says something, but then that made him feel like, you know, he admitted that he was abused and molested as a child, and now he feels like he doesn't have a stigma anymore, and he's not afraid to talk about it and to let others hear his story, but then to be able to share, and to hopefully that could help other people heal as well. So that's the reason why, as much as I might have anxiety after I'm done talking about it and just feel ashamed in a way, because like, oh my God, I let everyone know this happened to me. But then reading a story like that is the reason why I still keep, you know, get up and do it.
Yeah, when we first started talking about this, the two of us, it's been almost a year, and it's been quite a journey, and sort of watching you be able to say more and more and be able to verbalize your emotions and your emotional process has been such a journey in itself. Especially being a public figure who has this position of power, pretty much, to be able to say and destigmatize victims of sexual assault and rape, and to be able to talk about believing survivors, and to be able to talk about addressing rapists in a real way, in a very human way. And it's part of this massive conversation of Me Too and sort of like canceling people, and to be able to put a real face to that whole movement, like you said.
I'm still dealing with being a public figure,
right? And that's something I wanted to touch on is sort of how you're dealing with being that public figure and sort of a local face to a national, international movement. What is it like to deal with those people, not only in emails, not only in vicious Instagram comments that you've experienced?
I still am like, okay, when I read that one,
other social media, obviously interactions that you've had, but in a very real face-to-face way. I mean, what has it been like to talk to those people?
I'm still dealing with, like, I developed really bad social anxiety when it happened, and that's not me, and I, unfortunately, when just my rape just changed. Like, I died that day. Like, if you knew me before 2016, I'm not the same girl at all. It's like a whole new way of life. So having to deal with the social anxiety of knowing there are events that I have to go to, even after I spoke out about it, is hard in a way, because I don't know how to interact with people. I share my story, and I would like to hear other people's story and having to thank you, but then it's just like, what do I do next? What do I say? Did I say the right thing?
Dealing with that responsibility.
Because even when I step away from the microphone, I'm still in school, I'm still dealing with family, I'm still dealing with, like, my normal regular life, and I kind of forget that I'm a public figure, or people say, like, I wouldn't call myself a celebrity, but, like, I'm just kind of like, no, I'm just a regular,
you're well known. People know your face, they know your voice. You're with people on such a regular basis. I mean, I was just listening to a podcast recently where they sort of talked about this phenomenon, and having people with you in your private moments where, like, you're listening to the radio to fill time, or podcasting, these people's voices are with you. It's like you're having a conversation with them. So you're being able to talk about these very personal issues, but you're connecting with people in a way that maybe you don't even realize the power of.
I don't. I think that's another, because even that one email that I got, it was just, and I mostly heard things from females, so to hear a male listener send me that email was really just powerful, because I know there's a stigma with men,
right,
being sexually assaulted or abused or raped. So it's everyone has, not to say everyone, but like a lot of us have been unfortunately in that situation where we were, abused or sexually abused or raped. And so I feel like people don't want to talk about it. And I feel like when people do want to talk about it, other people are uncomfortable. And it took me a long time to realize this, until probably about a couple of years ago, before it happened, that, being a woman and being a woman of color, I know I was placed on this earth not to make you feel comfortable. I'm going to discuss the situations that I deal with being a woman or being a person of color in today's society, because it needs to be addressed, so you have an understanding where I'm coming from. It's still just one of those, I just feel like I'm just still a regular person. I've always, even when I step on the microphone, I'm still me. So it doesn't.
Well, because in reality you are.
Yeah, in reality I am. Because it's just, it's weird, because people are like, you hear somebody on the radio and they were like, oh my God, and I'm just like, I'm really much of a dork that in person. I'm not, I don't think I'm cool. I don't think I'm hip. I just think I'm a regular, 33 college student just trying to figure out life, just going through a journey. So it's definitely a trip, but that's what, I'm working on therapy as well.
Right. And that's something else is sort of over the months that we've talked.
I just started therapy.
Yeah. And when we first were having our conversations, you had addressed that it was still such a fresh moment of your journey that you weren't ready to take that step yet. But
no, I was terrified to talk about it.
Right.
Because it was just, because so many, it's Albany. It's Albany Capital District area. When it's somebody that raped you who is in a lot of the circles that you run into, it becomes difficult to figure out your life. And that's also how I developed my social anxiety, because I was scared. I was scared that somebody that knew him or was friends with him would approach me or say something or talk crap about me and say, and that was another thing that was terrified of me wanting to report it, was because I am known as a social activist. You will see me on the news talk about things. You'll see me down at Lobby Day. Those are things that I do that are actually completely separate from my job. So I was afraid people were going to be like, oh, she's just reporting it because she just wants to. And it's like, no, trust me, the last thing I want to be known for is the girl who was anally raped. But I know that that's what I'm going to have to face and deal with if the conversation is going to change. That is a burden I will handle, because it is important that we have to start listening to men and women and to look at not only what goes involved with reporting it, but the aftercare of being sexually assaulted and raped, because it's something that lasts a long time. Like, I know, like, even with the whole Kavanaugh thing, and they were questioning Dr. Ford if she, if her story was true, and I said, you can ask me 30 years from now if I remember how I got there, what happened when I came back. I'll probably won't, but I can still remember. I won't remember every single detail of my rape, because it's just burned in my head. And having to wait almost 2 years to get justice, you're afraid to forget one thing, because forgetting one thing of what happened could change the whole aspect of the result of what could have happened in court.
Yeah. And I do want to touch on sort of those legal issues, obviously, down the road. But first, I want to just jump back quickly to the process of being able to talk about your emotions and your experience with someone who's professionally trained to do so, clearly, with therapy, also having your friends. So in our conversations, we talked about when you did report your rape, you were given someone to talk to at the hospital.
Yes.
That was provided to you.
Provided to you, yeah.
But you chose not to take it at that time, and that was part of your journey, and everybody gets to make those choices on their own, but they are provided with those services. So I want, to get to the point where you did decide that it was time for you to reach out to someone
to get help.
Yeah. What was that like?
It was the singer of Sursly. I had a conversation with him two conversations with him in the last year or two. Last year, before everything was settled legally, and then after, and just having a conversation with him, and with being lucky enough to, because you have a job where you hear artists and people talk about what their struggles and their open honesty, and you respect that. You want to ask questions at the same time, because I couldn't really fathom talking about it to other people yet, because it was, unless they were close friends, especially complete strangers in that way. But he said that therapy helps. My mother wanted me to go to therapy, my best friends wanted me to go, and I'm just wasn't a therapist kind of person.
And it's a personal journey.
And I didn't know exactly what I was wanted to have happened in therapy. I'm still dealing with a little bit I still have depression in some ways. I still have days where I have my social anxiety and I'm anxious. But it was, I think, just for me to mentally be able to clear my head and prepare me talking about it, because I know that was going to be a lot harder than actually what I dealt with. Because I shouldn't say a lot harder, but I knew it was going to be a whole other situation to deal with. And he's just like, therapy helped. And he goes, just for me, you should try it, because because he, just by talking, he's like, I can see something inside of you that I don't want you to lose. And that can happen if you don't address whatever is dealing with it. Because there are some things that I have to still deal with and not let it bug me in a ways. And it really depends on the day.
Yeah.
But that was, I've only been going for a few weeks. She's really cool. And New York's great in the way that they have the free access to therapy. I mean, the parking isn't free, but that's Albany for you. But, I'm grateful to be able to have the sexual violence center be able to be there for me.
Yeah.
Because I know there's a lot of great organizations around that can help, but that's another thing is it's not easy to find how to book an appointment. I went to school, I'm in SUNY.
Right.
I had to talk to some teachers at SUNY because I had to get permission to get exempt for class to go to court, but then they're very helpful in knowing that if I had struggles with test anxiety because of it or triggers, I could have, the help to take a final by myself. And then they have their own, I think it's Middle Earth, their organization that I could go and get help and to see who I can reach out to for therapists. Because they have therapists on campus, but they also, through New York State and the County of Albany, I could go through. So it was great to have that support in school, and then to know that I have the support and someone I could talk to in Albany County as well.
Right. And it's so important also just to address like that every survivor's story and everyone who lives their lives dealing with mental health issues and things that come up in that way, that everybody's journey is completely different. And that no one's should feel like they have to fit some kind of journey or path. Like, okay, step 1, I do this, step 2, I do that. You don't have to follow those steps. Everything comes up as it will. And it's also very, it kind of made my heart warm to hear how you came across that step in, having a musician reach out and
just say, no, it was.
And the fact that you've had that response yourself. And I don't know, I'm hoping that it was an empowering moment for you.
It was, because, I'll probably cry on this, but there's a lot of like that job, like my job, and getting to be able to express myself in music and to sing along has kept me alive. So to tell artists, like, you have a job that you love is a reason I job, but I want to thank you for keeping me alive in this especially in the last 2 years. 'Cause it's every emotional, drain and stress and everything. But to be able to thank people who, even if I couldn't come up with the words in my head of what I was going through, but to know that there are lyrics out there or something that will just to sing to get your release, or to be like, oh, I'm not alone. Is a great feeling.
Yeah,
so.
To have that community and to have people who will validate you in such a real way.
But I also know that, in the music business, and even in any business, attorney business, there are things that go on like that. So I was fortunate for actually a few artists who want to sit down and talk or to ask questions, because they want to understand where they not should go or what should say or how to address things. I had one singer talk for like an hour and a half, but it was great for him to want to check up on me to see how I was doing, but had questions of like, if he said something about like, he's a huge fan of Norm Macdonald. And he said that Norm Macdonald said something about the Me Too movement. He goes, but how do I address that? And I said, well, that's your personal thing. I mean, you have every right to defend who you are and what you like and what your band's like and all this. But, I'm not going to frown upon that you support Norm Macdonald for, even though he said something completely stupid. It is all about communication though. So I thought it was great that he asked, like, how did this happen? How did this go? How do you feel about this? Like, we touched on the Hazia Zar situation, because there's always so many different things out there, and knowing that I've been through it, and as being a female, I can address it in my side, because, guys don't want to make that mistake either, when, that there's generally nice guys out there, and they have the awareness to make sure that they don't want to hurt or assault a woman in that way. But it's really about communication,
Yeah. So you've become this sort of beacon of light for people not only who have there's like hair not only who have experienced sexual assault and rape, but people who are watching this movement go on and want to talk to somebody who's directly and very personally facing it, and they want to know how to respond and how to communicate with the people inside this network and this very real and all too common experience that people have had. So that's also such an interesting outlet or sort of web that's come out of I don't know, your experience as a public figure in dealing with this. I mean, it's very different to be someone who doesn't have a platform in this way to deal with it. And I don't know, I'm just wondering if you've ever thought about what it would be like if you didn't have the radio, or not specifically the radio, but to have the opportunity and to regularly be speaking out about it, even on social media. When we think about what social media's role has been in this movement, and even before, like being able to speak out about your own experience in a public way, I mean, to sort of compare what that would be like to not have it.
If social media wasn't out there, it'd probably be a lot different. I mean, I'd be glad that more people actually read the newspaper, but it's
me too.
Yeah, it's definitely like, okay, like, let's read this story. But I mean, it's at some point I eventually would have found outlets, whether it be through newspaper or something else to say. But again, when I got the job, I wasn't going to be like, I'm going to take over the radio. It just, when things happened in the news and I can relate to it, and it was something to talk about real quick.
Because you could bring it home. Because you could make it real.
Yeah. It's just like, hey, I listen to you every day. That happened to you. You know, I'm getting used to that part, because, you know, I know that this goes everywhere. But at the same time, I can walk through the grocery store and nobody knows who I am. So I'm kind of like, you know. But I would have found a way, you know, even if it was through different organizations that I have done advocacy for before. Once I was ready, and once I knew everything legally was said and done, then I would be like, okay, I can do this.
Yeah, because there are organizations like RAINN that have like a speakers bureau who have sort of a network of survivors who are willing to talk to people who have gone through a similar experience, or obviously like the public or other organizations who have questions about how to deal with this, maybe like a business who's dealing with a specific case and they have questions, and there are organizations who are willing to do that. So that's always
grateful for those places, because you know, we can't stay silent about it. Like, you know, we got to talk about it. And I know it makes people uncomfortable, but that's the whole point. Like, we shouldn't have to make people, I mean, I shouldn't say shouldn't, but it's different with different comfortability, or if that's even a word, being comfortable. But when it's subject involving like this, or even race, it's like, you know, it makes people uncomfortable, but that's, you got to, because we've got to have that real, honest conversation about it. People got to hear details about what, just because you didn't personally go through it doesn't mean that makes my story less real. And that's what I always want to get across. It's just like, you may not know what it's even like to be called the N-word. You may not be just called what it's like to do that, but that doesn't mean that didn't happen to me and that's not affecting my life. So it's not
a social issue that we should be addressing as well, like a very valid thing that's happening in our society.
Because there's like a hole, and then people always see you know, like celebrities or like, you know, politicians say things and go through that, and I know that I'm just a regular girl from Albany, Colony, that people do know or do not know, but you know, I'm not like a celebrity, but it's just like, yeah, this makes it real. This makes it in my town, in my situation, somebody that I know. And I feel like when it's somebody that you do know, or that it makes it it opens the conversation.
Right. Yeah, it's a level of awareness. And that's also jumping back to the legality awareness as well, something that you dealt with in your process of going to court and going through that and having to tell your story over and over and over, let alone the, you know, like personal effect that it's had. Sort of, can you go through dealing with what your specific rape meant on the definition of rape that you've had to deal with?
So I didn't find out that anal rape was a different set of laws and regulations in New York State until I was at the hospital. It actually took me about 2.5, 3 days to report it. And it was a difficult 3 days for me to have to report it.
Yeah.
Because this is somebody that I knew, somebody that I had a sexual relationship with on and off for like 3 years. And I knew it was going to involve a lot of, we call it small Albany for a reason. It's not even 7 degrees of Kevin Bacon. It's just like 4 or 5. So it was a lot in my head, but I really didn't respond because I wrote him the next morning. And we can go into detail later if you want about what actually happened. I don't mind about that. Saying like, I didn't like what you did. Mm-hmm. I've been sleeping with this person for 3 years. I've never allowed him to have anal sex with me ever. Like, and he knows that, but he did without my consent. So I wrote him saying like, I don't appreciate what you did. I don't think we should sleep together anymore. You're a good person. I know that you're a good person, but you have something snapped. I felt like there's another, I saw this side of him more than other people did because we never hung out during the daylight, I should say, we were just convenience to each other, but there was something that was just not right that night. And he wrote me back saying, sorry, I thought you were playing. And in my head, I'm like, I'm sorry. I thought, what does bucking you off me twice saying no mean? Throw your whole body weight against me and do it anyway. So that was the moment that I realized I had to report it because he heard me and that was not okay. And of course, I found this out as I'm on my way to my father's memorial service. So it was like emotionally, my dad died in March. I lost my job in April. I went back to school. And then a month later, I get raped. So it's just like all these emotional things I dealt with in 2016. And so I went back, I think it was a Saturday, or it was Friday? Saturday, I went back a Sunday, just made it in the 72 hours to report my rape because to get a rape kit.
Right.
And the police officer came in and told me what it was, and I was just floored that anal and oral rape was a whole different set of language than vaginal rape. And it's called Sexual Criminal Act. So it was kind of, when you look at the laws and the language of the laws, now you understand, people can probably understand why people don't report it or why it's hard to report it.
Right.
Because they think it's bullcrap sometimes, the language of the law. Like, he was charged with a felony and he pled to a misdemeanor. And that, of course, there's a situation why he pled to the misdemeanor, but we'll get into that. But it was traumatizing to hear that even in New York, they don't call it rape, and that's what it was. And so that was hard because even when you read what forcible touching is, which is what she sentenced to, it takes away the penetration. And that as a victim is the most heartbreaking, and that what makes me just have like this, not anger, but little bit of a depression, knowing that like that's another thing I have to not defend, but say, listen, like even though it's like you have to bring it to light and make it real, because it takes so much away from what actually happened to you, because it strips it right away. Like, I was raped. This is what happened, but when you look at, what he was sentenced to, it was just like
a different definition.
Situation. It still seems really creepy, but it takes away what happened. And I feel like that's what I like. My ambition is to go to law school just so I can learn more about laws and regulations and realize that there's a lot of language that needs to be changed and needs to be updated to the real world that is going on now. And so I feel like that protects what happened was, I feel like even though he did rape me, he gets the forcible touching. I feel like that protects him in a way because it doesn't have rape in the sentence when like he goes to a job and they'll have to like, he's still got to like say what he did, but he can get away with not saying rape. So it's just like, thanks. How does that make me feel? Yeah. I feel like nothing happened. It made me feel like he just like grabbed my butt and didn't do anything. So it's like, no, that's not what happened.
Yeah. And jumping back to what you had just mentioned before, it was a traumatizing experience. Is like this repeat of trauma, and like you said, making it real that so many victims and survivors don't speak out and don't report their rape because there's so many hoops.
The process.
Because there's so many hoops to jump through.
It took me 2 years. So it's like
it can be such a continuous journey of trauma and having to relive your experience, and that can be so hard for people because, like, you know, we've talked about before, everybody's journey is different. Everybody deals with things in different ways, and to make the journey so much harder for the victim, and we don't know what his personal experience was in this whole entire journey, but like you're saying, it sort of simplifies things for him, but while you're still living with this experience. Yeah. So, you know, just to touch on that, I mean, it's been a long road. It
took about 2 years and like 3 months. He pled guilty to the forcible touching 3 days before the 2-year anniversary of when it happened. And so, you know, I was told expect it to take a while. I thought, I know, me probably being naive, I thought it would be not quick and simple, but I thought it would take less time than that. But if, you know, just to think about what you did and what you've done in 2 years, you know, I've had to deal with getting calls in and out, like getting, you know, conversations with the DA, having to switch around court dates, which means I had to like cancel work, find coverage. You know, I work 2 jobs and go to school. So having to deal with that and trying to push that out of your mind while you go through like regular life is hard, because I've had triggers, you know. Right. Because of the situation, I'm not scared of him, but because of the situation of the legal aspect, there is a restraining order, but that still doesn't mean that like I could be walking around and I can just by chance turn around and see him, that, you know, and it's not, and again, I'm not scared of him, but it's just like, I don't want to see you, you know, well, this has made such a hindrance on your personal daily life. Yeah. It's,
you know, like you just said, affected your school, your work.
Because every time we were supposed to have
social life.
Every time we were supposed to have something happen in the legal aspect of it happened during my finals. In December of 2017, we were supposed to have something done. I was in the middle of finals and I was stressed out, you know, like I had a mental breakdown, because it was just like, you're so focused on school and like getting ready for finals that the last thing I wanted to have to do was go to school and then have to switch a final or switch a date around or miss an important school date because I had to go to court or because this happened. So it was a lot having to deal with. And I know that I've had I wouldn't say like a full mental break. I mean, I had a mental breakdown, but it wasn't like I needed to put myself in a padded room. I just needed a day to not have to deal with everything, you know. I wasn't ever suicidal in the whole process of going through it, but there was days where I just didn't want to do anything. I just didn't want to exist. I just wanted to like fall asleep and then wake up and it would all be over. But I knew that couldn't happen. So, I mean, there were days where I didn't get out of bed in the early process, but then it's just like one day at a time. And then eventually you get up. I was very lucky to have very fortunate to have teachers that were understanding. You know, my first course, it's also hard in school when there are subjects that you take that set triggers too. Like I was in a business law class my very first semester back at school. So it's like I'm dealing with a legal thing and then hearing more laws. And my forensic science class, we had to do a whole segment on rape kits, and I was, and that's just traumatizing and triggering up alone. And I even think I told my teacher, I said, I can teach this one. Like I've been through it. I can talk, but right. It's a lot. It is really hard, you know.
What pushed you through to that final court day? Because that was a long day in itself. And I know Remember?
You were so thankful that you were there. I got you and my other best friend to come with me because I couldn't put my mother through that. My mother wanted to be there. My mother drove me to court. I didn't want my mom to have that memory.
Right.
You know, it's already hard enough to have her baby have to go through this. I just didn't want her to have to hear any of it or see. I thought she was going to kill him. Not like literally kill him, but she walked. Were you there when that happened?
Well, yeah.
My mother just
everyone was in the same hallway. I mean, that's
another thing. You have in Albany, you have such a small court hallway that I had to wait till he walked in just so I could walk into the waiting room because we just couldn't be near each other.
right.
My mother, I was just like,
And if you don't have former experience of going to court, you have no idea what it's going to be like. And to be in a room with people who are just sort of waiting on the benches to deal with their own case. I mean, to see you make your statement in such a powerful way, but then, people are walking in and out of those revolving doors, and people and other waiting for their case to be heard are sort of
people had no idea who they were witnessing this. Yeah, I think that was also the frustrating thing because when he had to turn around to apologize, I couldn't hear him because the guy next to me was talking, and I almost
loud.
It took all my might not to be like, "Excuse me, I waited 2 years for this. Can I hear this again?" And that's just the irony. I think of the universe likes to throw me every once in a while and be like, "We almost got you to get the." I mean, I heard it, but.
There was so much commotion
that I like to hear it louder, and so I could assess if he meant it or not. I'm not denying that he probably didn't feel sorry,
but it was waiting so long for that moment. And
it's kind of disappointing.
It's that thing where when you build it up in your head,
because I knew,
what is this gonna be like?
I knew Patrick was not going to give me the apology that I deserved. I knew that, you know what I mean, and I knew that from the beginning. You have to realize that, you know what I mean? Everyone thinks they deserve everyone knows they should have the apology that they rightfully deserved. Like, you violated me. I'm so mentally screwed up that I got to figure out stuff now of having to go through this, all because you couldn't comprehend the word no, and me pushing you off me. So to have to go through all of this and to just get a simple "I'm sorry" is, I can't hang up on it. That's something I'm working on.
Right.
Because there's that quote that's like, holding a grudge is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to die. I know I can't hold that grudge that I did not get the apology that I deserved. But on record, he said sorry. And then he said, he's like, I hope you can find happiness. I don't think he quite understands how hurtful and how painful and like life-changing it was to me. That's something I have to deal with because I know he's never going to understand that, but it's something you've just got to work with and let go. But to know that I had that moment and that I got to stand there and tell him how I felt, how I died that night, and I had to learn everything over again, that I have anxiety from even hearing your name I can't watch television, for a long time without being uncomfortable. Like, you think you go through a little bit of an okay phase, and then like you hear his name, or you see someone that looks like him, and you're just like frightened, and it's just, I can't wait for that moment to be gone. I can't wait to be able to sit and lounge on a Sunday and watch like a marathon of Law and Order SVU. I can't do that anymore because it just triggers so much. And I think during even the whole process, I just kept saying when I was when I was really depressed, like, I just want my life back. I just wanted my life back, and to be able to not be afraid to speak up before everything was said and done, and not have it look bad towards me. I was scared because I was a social activist that people were going to not take me seriously or think this was something I was doing because people can, and then people might think that's my paranoia, but people do that. Look what happens to politicians. Look what happens to musicians. People think there's always an agenda. And I go back to saying, like, listen, I don't want to be known as a girl who was raped, but that's what I know I'm going to, that people are going to know me as at some point.
Yeah. I mean, I remember you saying in our first conversations, it's like having a red blinking sign over your head.
It's like a neon sign that says like damaged goods or rape victim, and you just want to turn it off, but people just seem to like look at you. And that's the other thing I'm struggling with, is that I don't want people to feel sad.
Right.
Because people are just like, I'm so sorry. And then I know you're sorry, but and that's my struggle, because I don't want to look like a bitch, to be like, yeah, thanks, and just walk away. But I'm just not good with that. I'm also not good with compliments. So it's there's little things I got to work on.
It's being able to regain your own identity and not what other people are identifying you as.
Yeah. And I've got to figure out who the hell I am again.
Yeah.
You know, and that's still going to take time. It's not overnight, you know, it's they say time heals all wounds, but it's all, you know, and it's like, it's going to be a long time. I know I'm never going to be the same. So that's what I know. That's the other thing, is that I know I'm not going to be the same person that I was before this happened. And it's trying to reclaim the good parts of me that I'm afraid had died in the process. You know, I don't want to have social anxiety. I want to be able to go out, hang out, go to a show. I want to be able to like go to the gay bar with my friends. I'm like, you know, dance all night and not have to worry about somebody talking crap or being, my whole thing is being taken off guard, because sometimes I'm not the greatest when I'm taken off guard. You know, I was always worried about somebody coming up to me and saying something and me reacting in a way that I shouldn't have, and having it look bad or look like whatever. That was my big thing. So I think that's why I also secluded myself for a long time and just did school, work, came home, didn't do anything. Just so I didn't have to be social and not have to answer questions, or not to get drunk and then just like talk smack about him. Because I wanted to keep our situation between me and him and as less petty as possible, because you're dealing with somebody who is well known, and you just don't know how people are going to respond, or people who are going to defend him, you know.
What was it like, or what pushed you to that day when you got to make that statement in court and you not watched it wrap up? Because clearly this is something that we're talking about right now. It's something that you're still doing and you're going to deal with, and I'm sure he is, and the people who surround you both are going to be continuing to deal with. But what pushed you to that moment, and dealing with the legal issues, dealing with, you know, mental health issues, and that came up, and social issues? What pushed you to keep going?
Because it's a lot of things. It wasn't okay what he did to me. It wasn't, you know, that like, it's still hard, because him and I have never had any issues with us hooking up whatsoever. And so to know that, like, because I knew the second that he threw me down that it wasn't a normal situation, that that something was gonna happen. And so it's a lot to know that there's this person that, and then honestly, like, our relationship was just meaningless casual sex. You know, we didn't have a friendship where we would like talk and hang out or whatever. Like, early on we used to like hang out, but then we just, you know, we never dated, but it was just like chilling, saw a show, game, had a couple drinks, stayed over. Then it just became like, what are you doing? And I was fine with it. But then that was also hard, because now you have to take, like, I didn't care that he was drunk or was like tipsy every time I would come over. That didn't bother me. I never had a safety concern with him drinking and coming back from partying or whatever and us hooking up. Never had that. But then it became an issue, because it's all about remembering, because I remember every single detail. I highly doubt he does. You know, I think he might remember a few things, but knowing that I wasn't going to just let it go, because I think in his mind, and I'm just saying this is my opinion, in his mind, it was whatever. It was fine. It didn't hurt. Wasn't a big deal. To me it was, because I never let you do this. Ever. So how you thought it was okay was beyond me. But he needed to know that I was still a human being, because I felt like he forgot that. I never forgot that, despite all the bullshit he put me through, pardon my language, and he put me through a lot in the 2 years. I still didn't forget that he was a human being. And I think he did, because not even a week or two after I told him I didn't want to sleep with him anymore, he hit me up saying, I feel bad. Come do what you want. And I'm like, and that was hard. That still stings with me, because it's already like you feel worthless already because of what happened to you. But then there's like a whole new level when you tell somebody, hey, you violated me, I don't want to sleep with you anymore. But your reaction a week, 2 later is, I feel bad, you can come like blow me any way you want. It's just like, that's all you saw. You forgot that I was still a human being that you hurt, but you were just, horny, and you just want, like, that's hard. Like, that I still deal with. That made me just feel completely worthless, in the sense that it was just like, that's all I'm gonna be good for in some guy's eyes. So I feel like for me to stand there and to tell him how I felt and what he put me through, and so that he knew that, meant a lot. And as hard as it was, and how many times I rewrote my statement, I at the end of it felt like he heard what I had to say. And even though I couldn't see him, I felt like I think you and my other friend said his body language definitely changed as I was reading my statement. Because then I feel like at that point he realized, like
it was a very emotional moment.
Yeah.
That you stood there and
a
sea of people sitting down, but it's that thing where we have this idea of justice.
Yeah.
And we have this idea of coming to terms with someone who has hurt us as a victim, as a survivor, and that very picturesque TV scene of a courtroom where everyone's silent and everybody watches you, and you get to face them in the eye.
Yeah.
And look at them.
No, the judge stood me right next to the DA, and I had to look straight forward.
And to have a very real situation where you were in this sea of people just waiting for their turn to talk, and not being able to look at him was, it's a jarring situation and a re-traumatizing situation, but at the same time,
it was definitely, I knew I was going to cry in the middle of it, so it definitely was nerve-wracking, but I knew it was just, at the end of it, was going to be just a weight lifted off my shoulders. Because even when he was sentenced, that moment was just, like, I felt like I even said this, I was like, I felt like I was drowning for, it was probably a year, 11 months, and like 27 days it was, because it was 3 days before. It's like, I felt like I was drowning for that long. And him being sentenced, I could finally come up for air, because I was no longer legally obligated to remember every single detail about my rape. And that's right. A struggle, because you want to forget about it. You want to just erase it from your head and not have to think about it. But then it goes back to, if you forget one little detail, could change the outcome of everything. And we don't want that. And it's not that I sat there and thought about it. It's just, it kept me up at night. I suffer from insomnia, because I just would want to prevent myself from dreaming about it. It's so triggered and burned inside my memory that it's just goes, now I don't, it still goes through my head at least once a day. Not by me wanting to think about it. It's just something will trigger something, and it'll just be like, oh. And I'm just waiting for the day that it doesn't anymore, because it would just not be, I know it's never going to go away, but it's going to be good to have those days where I can go through like some couple of months and not have to worry about it just reliving and flashing through my head.
How do you cope with those triggers on a daily basis?
I have no idea. Yeah, I wasn't a drinker. I think maybe the first couple of months, because it happened in the summer. So once I was back full time in school, I just threw myself into school, but knowing I still had a summer, sorry, I think there was maybe 1 or 2 nights where I just sat at home and just drank by myself, because it was just hard. I didn't want to talk to anybody. I just wanted to do with it. And it wasn't like I was drinking just to get to not remember it. I just was drinking, but I just kind of just closed it all in, I think, which was not a good thing to do, but I didn't know how to deal with it at the time. I just would just sit up late and chain smoke and just not know what to do.
Has having the opportunity to publicly talk about what you've gone through over the past 2 years helped in any way, or is that a different journey on its own?
Total different journey, because I am like 100% okay with talking about it and to let people know, and this is what happened. I just have to deal with the emotional aspects of when I'm done talking about it, going back, because I just don't, I mean, I have a paper that I need to do, but I'd probably want to go take an hour nap after this, because it's just like, people know. But you just gotta just go about your day and just get your business done.
Mm-hmm. It's like that corny line, like, when the music's over. Mm-hmm. When you're done talking about things with your friends, with your therapist, with an audience,
you and your thoughts,
with someone who comes up to you and says, listen, you talking about your experience really helped me deal with my own. Walking away from that and being on your own is a different
thing when
roller
it's you
coaster.
And your thoughts, and you just have to sort them out and make sure it doesn't bring you down to somewhere you don't want to be. Mm-hmm.
Do you have any pointers for people who may be just starting on a journey of their own, or maybe at the same point as you are?
If it's something where if it's somebody about like wanting to report it and having to go through it, it's just, you got to have patience. You got to have time. You got to know it's going to take a while. I didn't think it was going to take 2 years. I would suggest people, if they are, maybe to want to get help beforehand. And it wasn't that I wasn't afraid to talk about it. I think it was more of me
being ready,
and or just being how to juggle everything, because school and 2 part-time jobs and travel and family upon a heaviness that's over there it's hard. You try to push it one way out the other, you try to push this on this way, and you try to focus on everything else, but then when things get thrown into the middle of it, there's, like I said, there's a part of my, like, I lost a lot of what I wanted to do because his roommate I did comedy with. So it was like, I was scared to go to run into him and to have people in that way. It was going out to different places, because his job involved him working with different restaurants and stuff that I knew people there. So it's like not wanting to go to those places. You lose a lot of your life, and I feel like people should. My problem was that I didn't want to say when I adjusted my life for him. You shouldn't. I just kept myself out of places that I knew I would get, I'm not going to say get in trouble, but could avoid the trauma. But that was me being scared. I was scared to have to deal with it. So I feel like people just have to, if they want to get help. Don't be afraid. Just know it's despite all of it, it's going to be worth it to know that somebody is held accountable for violating you.
Taking that responsibility off of yourself.
Yeah. But it's a long, hard, I mean, I've been through 2 of the hardest years of my life, especially having to deal with my father's death before that, and then going back to college for the first time in 10 years. And that is even hard too, because it's like people forget, I had to sit through orientation, and there was a whole thing about sexual violence that you go through, especially Sunni, and I had to walk out of it because I didn't want to have a breakdown in the middle of it. And I was like, listen, I'm already going through this. You can save, me the spiel, But of course, I'm also 33, so I was like 10 years older than most of all these kids. But then it doesn't change the fact. I mean, he was 28 when he did it to me, so it was like, like 28, 29, so it was this whole...
Yeah. Doesn't matter how old you are,
it's
what
still gonna happen
stage of life you're in.
It's
yeah.
But it's just having the patience. It was that I didn't. It took to the end of 2000. Took from 2017, because I was supposed to hear something. Do you want to go through the timeline of that, or is that?
That's okay.
Okay. So in 2007, it happened in July of 2016. He was arrested in 2016, September. And so 2017 was just this process. of getting phone calls, what's going on, how's this, how do you want to deal with this? But you also have to realize that it takes time because there's 4 district attorneys in the sexual violence, but this is all, that's why it takes so long. People see it on TV, things takes like 42 minutes, whatever. But, this is reporting it. And I sat in the hospital for a few hours, making sure that, the hospital had to get females to have the sexual violence center person to talk to, the person to take the case, and another person to talk to report it. And it's like you're repeating it over and over again, putting it to the police. Then the police have to pass it off to a detective, and it depends on what time you do it, depending on what because they even ask, like, if you want to take a day or two to really think about reporting it, you can. And it's not like saying don't, but like, it felt like that in the way, but also felt like, you're gonna go, it's gonna be a process. And then it was getting my the detectives. Detectives only work for a certain period of time, and it's how many detectives for all of Albany County. And we're talking more than just rape. We're talking like child abuse, neglect, all these things. So there's only so many detectives to spread all throughout the county to work on your case. And then it's when it goes to the district attorney, it's attorney. I think the day that he was sentenced, she had 4 other cases on the bill. And then even the day that I think she had another like 4 or 5 cases on her bill. So it's just like, you understand why it takes a long time, because it's not that you want to be the top priority, but you know that there's other cases that are going on as well. And that's what took me a while to comprehend that, because he got a private attorney, and sometimes private attorneys like to take their time calling people back, or have other things that are, clients that are more, cases that are more not intriguing or interesting, or I don't know, you know what I mean? It's just so it's
well, you see your own case as so real and vital and private and important, and then you start to realize that this is an ongoing and all too common issue among other issues that are happening and other cases that are happening, and you have to pace it out in that way. And so that just elongates that struggle.
Yeah, because that was, I think, one of the biggest misconceptions of my friends being like, well, why did he get arrested? Once you report it? Well, you got to prove it happened. You got to talk to him. You got to, and of course it took a couple days to find him, because he decided to get drunk at Log Bay Day and break his nose. So it was a whole other situation to be like, oh, okay, because to me, honestly, I think he thought this was a joke until he got arrested. He didn't care. Like, he just thought it was, getting talked to. It was just, they're like, oh, nothing. She'll, no. I think that's what he thinks he thought, or that's what I think. But I was also kind of, well, I shouldn't say also. It's what I thought, but it also kind of confirmed what I said when his probation, because you've got to talk to, like, probation because after he was sentenced, everyone thinks it's said and done, but it's kind of not, because I had to go through another process of telling everything again to probation, so that they can have my statement and what I thought about. Because when I said I knew he had a problem. I wouldn't say it was like a massive, like, I'm not going to say he's an alcoholic. I don't think he was, like a functional drunk. I knew he liked to drink. I knew he liked to party. Everyone that was connected to him also said the same thing, that he just loved to drink. So I didn't think, when I even walked into the hospital, I said, listen, jail's not going to fix him, but sobriety and somebody to talk to will. And for me, I fought for that. And that's why he got the misdemeanor, because I said to the DA, I said, he needs help. And if you can attach that to whatever sentence that the law says, then I'm okay with it. Because I wanted him to make a choice. You either can choose sobriety in the real world, facing people every day, or you can have your 3 hots in the cot for a couple of years. And I that was on the plate from the beginning. So it was frustrating in 2017 when I was supposed to get a call back, and I didn't hear from his attorney, didn't call my attorney back, because it's just like, dude, you're not going to jail and you don't have to register. What the hell is taking so long? I found out because in the process, in April, he fathered a child during the middle of all of this. So I was like, oh, okay, now this makes sense of everything, of why he went to rehab, why it took so long, why this. And that was hard on its own, because that's another aspect I wasn't expecting.
Because you're dealing with your own journey and then having to be witness to the other person's journey, and that can take a toll watching another person's life go by that you feel owes you more
serious and attention to this than something else. Now, I'm not taking that away from his kid. You know what I mean? Like, being a parent is a huge thing. But when I found out, everything in the timeline made sense. I'm not regretting any emotion or reaction that I had while thinking he was just bullcrapping during this whole thing. Because you don't know. You know, you're not allowed to talk to him. His friends stopped talking to me. People stopped associating with either both of us or one of us. And it wasn't that I was kind of like, somebody tell me what's going on. What is he doing? What is it? I knew he was still going to be drinking and going out after he was arrested. Before he crossed off his Facebook, he was tagged the day before he had to turn himself in at a bar. So it was like, okay, I knew, I didn't think he was going to take this seriously. And that's why I thought it was why it took 2 years too, is because he was like, but then of course, every time you call a lawyer, it costs you money or something like that. But it was definitely, an eye-opening thing because I remember the DA calling me saying that he's going to get help, and I was like, good for him, but he better be doing it for himself and not for a lighter sentence. Then I found out technically why, because he was going to be a father. That's going to rehab to be a father and I'm not saying that's a terrible thing to do. Like, that was great of him to do that. It's a hard pill to swallow to know that being charged with rape wasn't your click to be like, I have a problem I need to work on. That's another frustrating thing that I have to deal with, and those are another trauma and trigger that I have, because when I told you earlier, you can't judge a book by its cover, but when all you see on the cover is a fiance, a baby, a house, all cookie cutter, like moved forward, and I'm still trying to figure out if I can even trust human beings again, and it's not fair, but what can I do about it? Granted, I didn't want any of that with him, but it's still like, to me, I look at it, it's like, you moved on so easily, and I'm still dealing with what you did with me, and I will always have to deal with it on a daily basis. But in my head, you just could go home to, your wife and kid and your new home, and everything's A-okay. It might not be, but what I see in the cover seems like it would be.
Do you have, in dealing with this, do you have advice for people who may be witnessing the same thing in how to deal with the person who hurt you, and living in a world where, especially with social media, we are almost forced to bear witness to everyone's waking moment of their lives and what they choose to put out there? How would you suggest, as someone who's dealing with it on a daily basis, moving forward in your own way?
The same thing I said. I was like, just because it didn't happen to somebody else shouldn't change you. This was my story. Nobody can take away what I've been through. Nobody can take away the strength that I've had I one day I know I'll feel as strong as everybody thinks that I am. But I know that no one can take that moment away from me in court. Not him, not anyone who wants to say anything, not anybody else. I had that moment. It is on record. That is always going to be there. And that is what kept me going. Because, that's another thing with the whole legality. Because he was sentenced to a misdemeanor. Normally, victims don't get to read statements unless it's a felony. And part of the plea deal was that he had to apologize. And I got to stand there and tell him exactly how I felt. And he said, because as much as there was anger with the whole, basically finding, dating, engaging, getting engaged to someone else in this whole process was very hard. He gave me that, because I know that, the district attorney told me that he told his lawyer, he goes, he's going to plead. He's like, I'll plead guilty to whatever, because I know I did something wrong. And that meant a lot to me, because that he knew he did something wrong. Whether he was remorseful for it was a different story, but which I believe he is now. But he gave me that, and that I was like, and I was going to fight for that, to be able to say how I felt. Even if I couldn't in court, I was going to find some way to have my statement out there somewhere, because every victim deserves the right to be heard. And so the fact that he knew that he did something wrong and that he knew that I, because even his lawyer had a problem with it originally, thinking that I was going to sit there and just like bash him. And I was like, no, I'm not that much of a bitch. I can be, but I wasn't going to be petty about it. I wanted to let him know what he did to me and how it screwed me up and how I, had to live life again. Mm-hmm. And that's a moment that it can never be taken away,
Like addressing that your voice has value. Yeah.
That I'm just not someone that you were just sleeping with. I wasn't like your favorite, I think I phrased it, his favorite mouth to put his dick in. Like that was, I made it personal because I knew I could,
Because it is personal.
It is personal. But even if everybody around us didn't quite understand phrases or words that I threw in because of his and I's relationship, like I quoted The Dark Knight because I knew that was one of his favorite movies. Just to, to partial, because I don't think he, in my head, it's just like, I don't know if he has triggers, but I get triggers all the time. So if I have to, can't watch a favorite movie anymore because your name's mentioned it or somebody looks like you, I want you to feel that. So it's like if every time you watch The Dark Knight now and those few lines go across, I want you to remember that I used that in my victim statement to describe how you raped me. And then I threw in like a Mets thing at the end because those are both our favorite teams. So it's just like, so when you watch a Mets game that triggers, then at least you'll have an ounce of what it feels like. And as bitchy as that may sound, I'm still standing by it because I wanted him to at least feel what it was like for me. Because I think sometimes men or the women who are not the victims, who do the assaults, don't quite realize how traumatized one little thing you do to someone can be, or how traumatized I was after that happened.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Just keep fighting every day. Just know it's worth it. I had more of a release of knowing that I didn't have to remember everything legally than I did. It still was, defining moments. Mm-hmm. That I just, to know that I'm still here. I'm still alive.
Yeah.
Just people got to just keep going and know it, and knowing that you are worth every thing that you feel. You are worthy of life, and that you are worthy of being loved and being respected and being believed, because there are days where I still struggle with that of feeling worthy, because somebody just 5 minutes of somebody just wanting to do
can take a toll
of everything. Years. Like I don't want to date anybody because I just paranoid, not paranoid, but scared. I think I liked like 3 dudes this whole time, and I'm just kind of like, I don't want to, just, it changes your whole aspect in life. But with time and help, I'll be able to probably regain part of everything that I've lost. Mm-hmm. I still have a journey to do that, but you just can't give up. You just got to keep fighting. Yeah. That's the only thing I would tell somebody, because your story is worth being told.
Yeah. Well, thank you for telling your story and for being strong and for being such a beacon. I said this before, but beacon of light in local media, in the public, even on social media, because obviously people know your face, they know your voice, they know that you're someone that can be reached out to.
Yeah,
about their experiences. So
I feel that's the even though it's my job to entertain and play music, though, it's one of those where it's like I'm just still a real person, just because I am having a microphone in the middle of nowhere saying what's up doesn't mean that I'm not vulnerable, or I'm not a superhero. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's part of me just being who I am and being real is that I have days like everybody else, and I'm not afraid to share it. Yeah. And just to know that people aren't alone.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.